Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Lonely Artist podcast. I am your host, Ariane, and today I'm joined by Nick Mayburry, an exceptional senior 3D animator, and I know this from personal experience, an amazing animator instructor from Canada.
That was the sweetest intro.
Oh my God, I haven't even finished.
Oh my goodness.
You don't even know
Go
what's
on, then.
coming.
Please.
Part of his incredible resume includes winning the second place in the Toronto International Student Animation Festival in 2009 and first place in Skills Canada in 2010. And currently, he is best known for his work in projects like Next Gen, Barbie Starlight Adventure, Rusty Rivets, and more. So, Nick, thank you for coming and welcome to the podcast.
You really scraped those social medias, huh?
I told you I did some stalking.
Well done.
I like to
Fantastic.
know
Thank you so much.
the person I'm going to interview, sort of.
I mean, that makes sense. That way you don't ask like silly questions or something. Not that I would ever be like, just check my LinkedIn. Like that would be a lame podcast answer for everything.
It would be. I doubt that this is going to be one of them. I highly doubt it.
By the way, this is why I talk to myself so much in class, just to fill all the silences.
Yeah. I feel bad sometimes for it's tough. It's tough to talk to an audience, and I feel like students sometimes just are either shy or just don't know what to answer or scared of answering something incorrectly.
I mean, especially like with art school too, like I was super anxious when I was in school. I mean, I'm super anxious now, but even more so in school. So to get people to like volunteer information, it takes a while to warm it up. You know what I'm saying?
Uh-huh.
So yeah, then I just look like a crazy person talking to myself all the time.
Just got to learn to live with the anxiety and just make it part of your everyday.
This is how I get through everything at this point.
Which is good to know, because I know from experience a lot of people who see people who are already working in the animation industry or in the art industry. They feel as though it's kind of like this unreachable place, like this unreachable people, like they're not even human. Well, they are, but just kind of like this very serious breed of human being, which they're not.
Not at all, dude. We're all little goblins. Like, we're so awkward, and it's so funny. Like, you have like these really socially awkward students in art school, and they're like, oh well, one day I hope to become an animator, and animators are perfect. And like, no, like, we are you. We're just older with a diploma. Like, that's that's the only difference. And we know how to animate because we went through the school that you just signed up for. Like, people don't put us on a pedestal. You can be an animator if you have anxiety, if you have depression, and many people in art school do go through a lot of that stuff. So it's not unattainable for you at all.
And part of the idea behind the podcast, now that you said that you're just like a little goblin, is that yeah, we all are. We're just kind of like these lonely type of introverted human, and it's so hard sometimes to feel like there's any kind of community, which is not true. There is, and even now with social media and the internet, while it can have some negative aspects to it, I think what's really cool about it is that we can have conversations like this, get to know each other, and really kind of get a sense of what truly it is to live this kind of life.
Yeah, absolutely, dude. I remember like my first week of going to Humber for animation, I was just like, wow, these are my people. Like, going to a class and for 3 hours, it's just like a grown man talking to me about animation. Like, and he's a professional and he takes it seriously, and he's not looking down on me for wanting to be an animator, and it's a serious career. Like, and everybody around me was talking about this, and they all liked the same stuff that I liked and saw all the stuff that I was seeing. Like, it was so, I don't know, affirming, I guess would be what you would say nowadays. Like, it was so great just to be surrounded by that. So yeah, that we are out there and we exist, even though like it's a small industry. So it's hard to find people into all the same stuff as you, but we're out there.
We exist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I felt that now a lot with going to school, kind of like having a second childhood slash teenagehood because
Yeah.
I was not part of it when I was a teen or a child because I was very different. And yeah, it's very nice to find your people, and college
Totally.
allows for that.
Am I allowed to ask you questions? Can you go into that more?
Sure.
That sounds interesting. So were you in school before?
So I've never been formally educated in art or in animation. Everything
Really?
has been, yeah, through basically the internet, YouTube, and kind of like
Oh, wow.
trial and error. And I feel like a culture like the Mexican culture doesn't necessarily see animation or art as a viable career. It's not something
Right.
that people can truly make a living out of comfortably. So
Yeah.
yeah, it was not even something that I was considering. I was trying to figure out a way to like incorporate art into a more viable career like marketing or graphic design, but it was definitely not for me.
Yeah.
So I never pursued it formally until I knew I was going to be able to study animation, which is now that I'm, a full grown adult, and you're like always saying that you're old, but like we're literally just 3 years difference between us.
Right. Yeah, I've had it hurts. Like I always say like I'm an old man because usually the first class that I ever taught was in 2020. So I was 27 and my students were still in high school. So it's like a dual credit program, which is really cool actually. So if you are in high school in like the GTA, you can take the first year animation class at Humber College. And if you pass it while in high school, if you end up going to Humber, you don't have to take it again. You get an actual college credit for it. So I was teaching high school students who were like 16 to 17, and I was 27. So they kept calling me boomer and everything. So.
Oh my God. Ow.
Yeah. I just kept it going. But I will get students who are like 30 or like 30. I'm 30 right now. And they're like, Nick, stop calling yourself old. Like, you're making me feel bad. I'm like, I'm sorry. I'm
You
sorry.
are. You are. You're making me feel old.
Not intentionally. I'm not trying to do that.
I know. But okay, well, I know that you feel old, but let's maybe go back to the early years of Nick. How did you like begin this art journey of yours? Like, where did it start and why?
Sure. Yeah. It's funny because people, even when they look at like Pixar animators and stuff, they're like, wow, I wonder how they began. We all have the exact same story. What I'm going to tell you is what you've probably already heard a million times, or some variation of it. So when I was 6 years old, I wanted to be a comic book artist. So I make little comics because I read Captain Underpants. That was really big when I was a kid. So I decided I was going to make comic books, and I would always draw all the time. Then when I was around 12 or 13, like Flash animation on the internet was a big thing. So like Newgrounds, Albino Black Sheep, all those throwbacks, those were huge. And that's just a result. This is me taking an old man tangent, but it's the result of we didn't really have YouTube because video was such a giant file size. And to find a company that could host a video file of several hundred megabytes was just not going to happen. So animation online was really big. If you wanted to tell a funny story, you'd have to animate it. You couldn't just film it. There's no way around that. You had to learn the skill of animation. So when I was 13, I was like, okay, I want to be a comic book artist. I love all these animations because they cater to me because they're all 13-year-old humor, like Family Guy ripoffs, video game, all this stuff. So I'm like, yeah, I'll get into that. And I start doing that, and I recognize that I'm bad at it. So I got a copy of the Animator Survival Kit, which is like the animator's Bible. If you don't know about it and you want to be an animator, highly recommend it. Richard Williams, fine Canadian.
I'm curious to know, how did you find out about it? Like, how did you know that to find that book?
I probably Googled it.
Oh.
To be honest with you. Like, I know that I got it in high school, probably when I was around like 15 or 16. So I'll bet what happened was I was looking into like how to make animation a career, looking into like Sheridan College, all that stuff around here. And then people were probably mentioning like, my professor said, if you don't read the animator survival kit, then you're garbage, not a real animator. I don't know if that's what they sounded like, but that's probably how I found out about it. So
Okay.
trying to spread the good word, you know?
So Google was around then.
Google, yeah, dude, I remember Dogpile search when I was a kid. Do you remember Dogpile?
No, I started doing my searches through Yahoo.
Oh yeah, respect.
Yep.
Yeah.
Good old days, the dial internet.
You know what I'm on now? I'm on Bing AI. You ever get onto that Bing AI?
No, I have not.
It'll change your life. You'll never go back to
I
Google.
feel like Bing used to be this like ugly cousin, you know? Nobody wanted to use that. And now it's like
no one wants to use Bing.
Now it's like
but with AI.
Yeah, I'm all powerful now that I have the tools of AI around me. But I have not used it.
I like to support the little guy, you know, Microsoft Bing. Okay, tangent, right. So, animator survival kit, and I'm in high school at this point. I have this wonderful comm tech teacher, and she was so encouraging, and she encouraged me to enroll in these animation competitions around the region. So like Skills Ontario, for example, which, by the way, I'm the tech chair of now. So that's went full circle. It's basically this competition provincially where you enroll in this competition and then you go over to Toronto and you compete with a bunch of other people. You're on a team of 2 and we give you an idea and then you animate that idea. You have like the full day. And then at the end of the day, you hand it in and you get judged, and whoever wins, whoever loses goes home, stuff like that. It's awesome. But honestly, like, you know how we were talking about as an animator, or I mean, even just as an artist, it's like, it's easy to feel lonely and it's hard to find your people. Having competitions like that, especially, well, even for animation, I should say, is again, like very affirming to say, this is a provincially funded thing. Actually, it's mostly donations, but you know, the province cares about this, you know, your country cares about this. And if you want to be an animator, like this is something we support and it's something you can compete in and we want to grow your skills. So that was awesome. So starting to become a part of that like scene, if that's even a scene, right? In high school, starting to take it more seriously. Then I had decided that I was going to be an animator because, and though I strongly disagree with this now, it was because it was my passion, you know, and follow your passion and you'll never work a day in your life.
Oh my God. I really want to dig into that. I want to dig into that. But before we do, and while we're in that area,
okay,
you know, you started pretty young knowing what your quote unquote passion was going to be. A lot of people don't figure that out until much later in life. And you had firsthand experience in a competition and on your own exploring Flash and YouTube videos, all those things. But what are some struggles that you encountered along the way while pursuing this career that you didn't really anticipate?
Oh, probably the biggest one for me was that I couldn't draw. I was so bad at drawing. And when I was younger, like more so when I was in high school, maybe my first year of college, I had it in my head that traditional animation was the only valid form of animation and that 3D was like a scam. Like it was somehow a lesser medium than 2D animation, which is another thing that I strongly disagree with now. Because I don't think the medium matters whatsoever. But with that really strong belief of thinking that traditional animation was the way, the only true path for animation, that married me to having to draw. So back in the day, if you wanted to animate, you had to draw. That's how you animated. If you couldn't draw, you couldn't animate. But now with 3D, with rigs, it's more like puppeteering. So you have the rig and you're just moving the joints around into poses. It's really important to know the foundations of life drawing. However, nowadays, because of rigs, because of 3D, drawing and animation are two separate skills. And thank goodness they are, because otherwise I wouldn't be able to animate. Yeah, dude. Like, and just barely too, just barely. So that was like my saving grace. And funny how life will just humble you, because I was, I was going to be the greatest animator ever, and I was going to outdraw everybody around me. And then just slowly realizing that I just didn't have the chops. I wasn't progressing fast enough in my drawing. And this is like 4+ years of life drawing. And I was decent at it, but it was clear that I didn't have the same level of skill or even the same level of passion for drawing as other people in my classes. So yeah, that was very difficult for me, learning that I'm not good at drawing.
Yeah, I feel like that would definitely, coming from a place where you think like the only valid way to animate or the only like true type of animation is 2D, and then realizing and coming to terms with the fact that this is something that perhaps is not the thing that you want to do or that you feel passionate about, must have been like just kind of making you question your whole identity at that point.
Oh yeah, dude. And because I was 17, 18 at the time, and like the whole, like when you're younger, right? Your whole thing is like, who am I? What's my identity? And like, I don't want to make fun of that too much because it's a real thing that everybody goes through. But the older I get, the more I realize, like, okay, so for example, there's this writer, Austin Kleon, who writes this book, Steal Like an Artist. And he says it's a trilogy. He says in one of them, when it comes to like, okay, I want to be an artist, you don't want to focus on the noun of being an artist. You want to focus on the verb of making art. And when you focus on the verb of creating and making art, the noun will follow. So your goal, what you need to aim for is not like, oh, I need to be an artist, right? I need to be a 2D traditional animator, whatever that means, because then you're just coming up with all this BS and these like external signs of what I think an artist is. And for some people, that's like walking around very like holier than thou, very pious, like I only watch experimental animation, like I hate Disney animation, like, and you end up being like really fake, and it makes you really anxious because you can never be the noun that you aim for just by trying to be a noun. No, you have to do something. You have to be the verb. And often you don't even get to pick your noun. Often the world picks the noun for you. Whatever your title is often just what other people call you. But they don't know what to call you until you actually do something about it, until you put stuff out into the world. So certainly as a young man, I was trying to like discover my identity as this amazing 2D traditional animator. And I am so grateful that life smacked me clear across the face and told me, no, you will do what you are meant to do, not what you want to do, you know?
Literally just dropped like a wisdom nugget there, because I agree with that, and some things like that, like what you're saying, like being an artist is the verb and not the noun, is something that perhaps myself, I think that is kind of like common sense, but you don't actually like think about it truly if somebody doesn't tell it to you. It's in 2 words.
Yeah. I mean, and there's a difference between like knowing something and living something as well. Like it sounds so much of life is simple, but it's not easy. It's simple and very difficult, especially when you're going through it. Like if I had heard that advice when I was 17, I'd be like, whatever, old man, sure. And I'd pretend to take it to heart, and then I'd probably do the exact same thing and make the exact same mistakes.
Yeah. Well, do you think your younger self would have said that you were not an artist because you do 3D and not 2D?
It was only like a few years ago that I was even comfortable calling myself an artist, because I am very averse to, I think maybe going through that whole experience. I don't like being like, my whole identity is blank. My whole identity is blank. And I think we're pushed by our culture to do that over and over again, and to kind of tie up our whole identity, our whole personhood in a very like easy elevator pitch or like a one sentence thing. And to me, also like my history. So the rest of the story of how I got here would be me going to Sheridan because I thought I had to go to this world renowned school, very artistic school. And then I ended up getting really depressed and dropping out, which again shattered me because I had this identity of being an artist, got that shattered. And so now for a really long time, and I was very bitter about it and arguably still am, but for a very long time in my head, I had this idea of what an artist was. And they were somebody who could draw and paint, and they were like thought they were better than you, or like they went to OCAD university and they were cooler and they wore cool clothes and they looked very alternative and all this cool stuff. Very like high class stuff in artist. Whereas to me, I've always felt that animation was super blue collar. Like in terms of the art world, animation's really blue collar. Like you go into work either in like a weird Hawaiian shirt or a hoodie, you become one guy or the other. Yeah. Or your pajamas, really, super blue collar. And I didn't want to identify as something I felt like I wasn't. Like I don't feel like super upper class or anything. But then at the same time, I guess now that I'm moving more into like being a teacher, professor, a senior animator and stuff like that, I do want to be somebody that people can look at and say, oh, that guy's an artist. I can be an artist too. I don't have to be stuck up. And I'm not saying that people who aren't animators that are in art are stuck up. I'm just saying this is what's in my head. And it's honestly probably wrong. If I met somebody into fine arts, they're usually really cool. This is my own thing I'm going through. So please don't take it personally. But I want other people to like, see me and be like, okay, this guy's like not super stuck up. Like as my teacher, Nick doesn't have the expectation that I have to be perfect at everything. Like I'm allowed to make mistakes. I'm allowed to speak casually. I don't have to constantly consider the cultural ramifications of my art. I can just enjoy making things that I enjoy and can put them out there kind of thing. And that's valid.
I love that. I mean, I agree with that 100%. Is one of the reasons why I am pursuing animation. I think people who go into animation, a lot of us, at least in my experience, come from a background of comics or storytelling, and it's kind of like that thing. You just kind of want to share your creativity in a way that's accessible for other people to consume it. And it's not, you don't want to be this like person on an altar and like making this whole thing about your personality more so than the art itself, and the art becomes inaccessible too. So I 100% agree with that, and I love that you made that observation, because I do feel like it is a blue collar type of work environment, and that is the appeal for me, at least, of animation.
That was so well said when you were like that you don't like when it becomes more about the artist than the actual art. So I agree with that very strongly. And you talking about comics, in a background like in comics or animation, it reminds me a lot of like pop music, or like Disney animation. So for example, like pop music, you get such easy cool points by being like, I don't listen to popular music. I listen to this woman screaming into a microphone across the room while she knits, and there's like a washboard 2 blocks away and a goat screaming into the mic. That's what I listen to. And you've never heard of it, right? And it's like, you don't actually like that. You're trying to build this identity on this art. You're trying to like, this is who you want to be for some reason, but you just want to be better or different in some way. Like people like pop music because it's good. Like it's catchy. It moves people. I'm not saying it's necessarily always deep or necessarily has always something amazing to say or even important to say, but it's really catchy and it's really entertaining. And there's nothing wrong with wanting to be entertained. There's nothing wrong with wanting to escape the world for a little bit or to just dance or move or something. So when people, I don't think it's fair for people to look down on comics. And I think it's important to say that also as people who make comics and who make animation, to say that there is valid reasons for the work that you create, and it is important in our society to create it. And just because it is looked down upon by people who you think are better than you sometimes, it doesn't mean it's not important, the work that you do.
Yeah, that's true.
I realize I sound like I'm like making up this group in my head that's like against me or like trying to sound off artists. Like,
are you being persecuted?
Yeah, no, I'm not trying to victimize myself at all. Again, this is just like, I don't think it's necessarily like that. I just, in my head, I have that perceived image like as a blue collar worker. And I would assume that other people have that image too, but.
Well, I mean, it's a generalization, but I don't think that it comes from a place that isn't true, at least from my experience. You know, you meet cool people into fine arts. That's not to say that they aren't, but historically, a lot of it has been a little bit just inaccessible. And I think that one of the things that is really cool about animation or storytelling is that because it is not about you, the artist, it's about what you create, you're much less tied to it, which allows you to be more than just an animator or just a comic book artist. You're like a full person. You're not like just this one persona. What do you think is the coolest part about being an animator or doing animation?
The coolest part about being an animator, I can't. Right now, it's like I get to work from home, but that's like a very, very surface level answer. For me, it's kind of like it's being able to like craft a performance very, very nuanced, like and in detail. So, like, I hope this is a relatable thing that everybody has. Like, have you ever had the fantasy where you're like, if I just knew the perfect thing to say to this person, like, you know, they would become my best friend, or like this person would fall in love with me, or this person would give me the job. Like, there's a perfect set of words and a perfect way of saying them that will like perfectly convey what I'm trying to communicate. Everybody's going to get it. Like, is this relatable at all?
Yes. I mean, I have a YouTube channel, Nick. This is like...
Right. Especially like, yeah. Especially as like a lonely artist. It's often, I would assume, in a lot of our childhoods, a lot of us growing up, we find it difficult to communicate in person, which is probably what leads us down the path of art and communicating in a different way, with visuals, with audio, if you're a musician, stuff like that. And what's wonderful about animation is I don't have to come up with anything on the spot. I can sit down and I can think about how I want this character to communicate what they're feeling. And I get to fine tune that down to every single detail, like how their hands are moving, where they're like how their fingers are moving, how clenched a fist is or how loose it is, like what the eyelids are doing and the eyebrows, like so detailed. And I get to watch it back. And if I don't like it, I get to change it. And I get to change it over and over again. And I get to get feedback from other people and they help me make it better. And when I'm done all of that, I have this like wonderful piece that communicates in explicit detail exactly what I wanted to communicate. And these characters like come alive, and everything that like my soul of what I wanted to convey through that character, you can actually see it on screen. And I think that's extremely compelling to somebody who finds it difficult to communicate plainly to others.
Yes. Oh my God. So much. I feel like animation scratches that itch of like the overthinker, overanalyzer, and even like just anxious side of us, because there is that space for repetition and detail and really thinking about. I mean, when you look at it from like an outside perspective, right? It's kind of insane that somebody would want to sit down and move something, you know, like little by little until it does the most mundane action in the world. Yet we are very passionate about doing that. And it's not only because it does feel great that it allows us to communicate, but besides that, I feel like also at the end of it, you're like left with something that was not there before, like you bring something to life.
Yeah. It's so funny to think of like, if if you take 10 people, a lot of them would probably watch their favorite Disney film or whatever when they're young and be like, this is awesome. I want to do that. I want to be an animator. Then if you took those 10 people and you pitch them what animation is, like you will work 2 weeks, like, and you will be done 10 seconds max. 9 of those people will be like, oh yeah, no, I absolutely don't want to do this. And they'll walk out of the room. And one person will be like, hell yeah, let's go. Like, it's such a strange response, but you're right. It really does scratch that itch for people. Like if you're like that, I know this one's relatable. Everybody in the shower being like, oh, I should have said this to that person. That's how I would have won the argument. That's what animation is. It's winning the argument every time.
It's those shower thoughts that are so eloquent, and you're like the
Yeah.
most amazing person at communicating and winning arguments and like
Yep.
explaining things. 100%. I will say I am definitely that person, because in my
Yeah.
brain there's this like, I'm smart, but then I say things and I sound like a total idiot.
Yeah, that is relatable. If you go inside your own head, you're like, bro, I am so personable. I'm so good at communicating. And then you speak, you're like, oh, no, I'm not.
Exactly. You just, yeah, you're faced with reality. But,
Yeah,
we do what we can.
that's right.
What would you define as success for someone who is an animator? Like for you, what does it mean to be a successful animator?
I think it really depends. And it, again, like I think we're getting into that noun of like what an animator is or isn't. Like for me, like at 30, how I define success would be different as how I would have defined it when I was 22 and I was starting out. So now I'm like, am I paying the bills? Is my family eating? Like, do I have a job that allows me to stay at home and gives me more freedom? Like, because maybe right now I'm leaning more on the part of my identity that's a husband. And then maybe in the future, I'm leaning more on that identity of me as a father, hopefully, something like that. And so maybe the animation part takes a back seat to that. And the animation has to serve those other parts of my identity. When I was 22, or even younger than that, you'd probably get more of the answer you'd expect, which is like success as an animator would be, being able to work on an amazing project and being pushed to my limits and like getting critique after critique and, working that overtime and learning and sending it back for critique and just like all this like, abuse of getting my shots just constantly critiqued. It's not abuse. It's very healthy in animation. Don't worry. But just really pushing myself in that regard. Right now, I think success for me would be defined as it would be animating professionally on a healthy project that allows me to animate to my current potential and stretches me reasonably past that so I can grow as an animator. How's that? Okay. And that's very specific. So like animating professionally, because I want to get compensated. I want to get credited. That's important. On a healthy project. So the employees are treated respectfully. There's enough time to animate well, stuff like that. Allowing me to animate to my current potential, which is great because it's, as an artist, it's always tough to, if deadlines are tight, and often they are, you have to focus more on speed than quality. And that hurts your soul as an artist, and then, stretching me reasonably past that so I can grow, which is to say I'm not getting like slammed by ridiculous notes and getting burnt out, but I am being pushed by people who care about me. And my directors, anim soups, anim leads, stuff like that. Dude, a good animation lead that will challenge you enough to grow is a beautiful thing. There is nothing better in this world than a good mentor that will push you just enough to learn.
Yeah. Well, mentors are like so underrated, especially now. But mentors are literally what make us as human beings like be able to pass on information successfully
Yeah.
and even evolve past the original information that we learned. So I'm a
Yeah.
big proponent of mentors, but also kind of like breaking that old relationship of like the mentor is this like high and I am down here. It's more like just a collaboration between people who have different information and who can share it and, you know, learn from each other.
Totally.
Which I think is great.
You'll hear this a lot, is that animation is a team sport. So you can't make a show or a film or anything as one person unless you have 20 years to animate, right? You just don't. You have to work with other people. And what's great about that, when you get a good lead, is that they'll understand that you're a colleague. You know, even if they've been working for 10 years and you're the new guy, you're a junior, not treating you like you're below them, you know, knowing that you're on the same level, you just have different experience. And, you know, I've had people who have been above me in experience who treated me like I was below them. And I think I said this in class, like I'm pretty scrappy. So I would either leave or I would get another supervisor, or they would stop talking to me like that. Cause it sucks. Like nobody deserves that. That's why I always tell you guys in class, like, just because I speak casually, know that I'm going to speak respectfully, even if it's in casual language. And you should expect that of your supervisors, of your bosses, of your leads, seniors, stuff like that. Like, this industry was so, as I'm told, I did not work in the 90s because I was less than 10 years old. But like, apparently animation used to be super toxic in the 90s. In the 90s, apparently very toxic. What I'm told the reason why is because in high school, a bunch of these lonely artists who were very much bullied and like spat on and all this stuff, they're like, nobody accepts me in mainstream. I'll go into animation. That's the alternative career path. And then they get just a smidge of power and they just unleash all that pent up rage on anybody below them, which is the most pathetic way of dealing with and expressing that hurt. It's so sad. Like you could have chose, there's a forked road, and on one path you're an awful bully, and on the other path you're like, hey, that was awful what happened to me. I'm gonna deal with that on my own and get better with that, and then make sure it doesn't happen to others and prop them up and support them in the way that I would have wanted to be supported. Thankfully, I think we're mostly there.
Yeah, I think it's getting better for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, you just, I think in any endeavor, but specifically for any art career that you're looking to pursue, it just comes down to respect. Like,
yeah,
if you respect somebody and they respect you back, I doubt that there will be that kind of dynamic of like power struggling in an unhealthy way. Sometimes, you know, competition is healthy and you do want to push yourself, like you said, but in a respectful way. And it's something that I really like about your class, because you make it accessible because it's casual, but also there is that feeling of respect and professionalism.
That's great. I'd love to hear that. That's good. That means I'm doing my job well. That's great feedback. Thank you so much.
My official review.
Beautiful. It's recorded and you can't take it back.
Exactly. You can refer back to this conversation.
That's right.
Well, you live and breathe and work in animation. What is your biggest pet peeve when it comes to animated shows?
Wow. I'm a complainer, so that's a really long answer. Yeah. Okay. My biggest pet peeve when it comes to shows specifically, like, so if I'm watching an animated show, I think my biggest pet peeve is how every children's show ends with a scene where somebody says something that's not even funny, and then every character laughs, and that big black circle comes and it fades to black and it hits the credits. And you're like, that wasn't even funny. And two, nobody laughs like that hard for that long. Not at all. And it's usually, this is a big pet peeve. So like, I'm unnecessarily focused on this. It's usually some character eating a lot or like eating more than they should, and then everybody laughs at that character, and then it fades to black. It's really strange. Like, it feels very 1980s humor. Like, I know you can write something better than that, but
Yeah.
they all end that way.
It is kind of
and then
weird, for sure.
It's, dude, once you notice it, you're gonna be like, I hate this.
I won't unsee it now.
Yeah.
It's like the laugh
and then-
tracks from the 90s shows. You're just like, why are
Oh,
they laughing?
that's actually a great point. Yeah, because nowadays you have like no laugh tracks. So if you're not used to that, like if I watch something from the 90s, because I grew up in the 90s, like it probably wouldn't bother me a ton. But if you were born in like 2005 or something, and you went back, you'd be like, what the hell is this strange purgatory? Where is everybody? Why are they laughing?
I've seen like edited videos on YouTube of like shows like Friends, well, where they take out all the laugh tracks, and it's so.
And they take scenes of Ross.
Oh my
remove the
God.
laughing, and he's the biggest monster.
It's so uncomfortable. He's just like the
Yeah.
worst.
Yeah, like these laugh tracks were pulling a lot of weight back in the
Yes.
day.
It reminds
Wow.
me your pet peeve reminds me of that because that's something I can't unsee. I'm just like these laugh tracks.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. But and then so my pet peeve of animating on shows is unnecessarily large amounts of background characters. But that's like a vibe for the whole show. So when you're on television, you don't have a ton of time, you have really tight deadlines, and you don't have a really big budget. So to me, the smartest thing to do for animation would be to eliminate everything that's not absolutely necessary. Because, you know, the animator only has 40 hours a week. Let's get rid of a lot of this background. Let's get rid of a lot of this stuff that doesn't need to be here. Now the animator can put those 40 hours into the thing that the audience is actually watching, the foreground character. And shows that don't cut that stuff out, I think really hampers how good the show could be. Because obviously you can't give yourself more of a deadline and you can't give yourself more of a budget. That's fixed. So all you can really do is make smarter choices as to what actually matters in a scene. And what I found sometimes is that that's not always there. And sometimes you just end up spending a lot of your week animating characters that nobody's going to remember or really notice. So there you go. Two pet peeves for the price of one.
That would be something that I would not like at all. I would be like,
No.
oh my God, all this effort, all these hours for something that definitely won't be appreciated, seen, or even
Yep.
it's useful at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who would you say are your biggest art inspirations when it comes to animation specifically?
When it comes to animation, I tend not to do that. So kind of like what you were saying, where you're like, not making the artist more important than the art. I tend to just like whatever I like, I'll store in my head and try to put it on the page at some point and like just steal from as many people as possible.
I love that. Honestly, that's a very valid answer. And it's something
God.
that not a lot of people have said because a lot of people do have like this set of people they idolize, right?
Yeah. And I don't think there's anything wrong with having names that you really like. I've never been able to really do that. Like there's not one person. Oh, I'm sure that there's like one or two people where I'm like, everything they do was perfect. And I want to be just like them. It's always like, yeah, I think Disney has great stuff. I mean, they also have not so great stuff. I don't know who animated every scene that I like, but I know the scenes that I like, and I can steal that stuff from the scenes themselves. Like, I don't know. So, I mean, yeah, I like Disney stuff. I like that very like more subtle kind of emotional animation, like focused on beauty and shape. Names like Glen Keane, Milt Call, stuff like that. Those are the names that would come up. Sony Animation, they're really pushing that cartooniness. If you think of, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs is a good example of doing really like Looney Tunes, Tex Avery style. That's another name, right? So cartoony stuff or like Spider-Verse stuff as well is really cool. That would be like the bigger names. I am infinitely charmed by Studio Ghibli. I love that. I mean, just Eastern art in general or anime in general, they have this boldness to like slow down and really focus on the environment and the ambience and the sounds of what's going on. And it really pulls the audience into the world that they're weaving, instead of like the very like North American style of like you start the movie and it's a car chase and people are screaming and there's gunshots and stuff. Like for me, that just scares me and I want to leave. Like it's too much. It's sensory overload. So I really appreciate that with like Studio Ghibli. And then one that might be like not as popular. I really respect Hanna-Barbera. So I didn't even know this until I started teaching the class that you're in, where I teach about animation history and we talk about Hanna-Barbera. And even though the animation in Hanna-Barbera, like Flintstones, Jetsons, Yogi Bear, it's nothing to really write home about in terms of like how it moves. But, and this goes back to my pet peeve, they knew that. They knew that they had a tiny budget. And so they deprioritized anything that wasn't absolutely necessary to what they needed to happen, which was story and gags and getting kids to laugh because they knew their audience. They just want to make kids happy on Saturdays. They got rid of everything they didn't need. They pulled the budget way back so that they could pay their animators. There's a lot of good arguments to say that Hanna-Barbera kind of saved animation and kept it afloat when Disney was dying. So they understood the assignment, basically. And you look at Hanna-Barbera and you're like, the animation's not good. And you're like, but it had to be not good because they only had so much budget. They focused on what was important at the time for that company. And I mean, what does that tell you, right? We'll get in our head a lot as artists, and it's important to push yourself and to know your craft. But this is why I remind people that, you have in your head, oh, I'm an animator, I'm an artist. You're a storyteller. You are a storyteller. Like, people remember moments from Sesame Street and the Muppets and Hanna-Barbera cartoons. And none of these things move with the beautiful fluidity of a milk call animated scene. But it affects people, and those memories will live in people's heads, and it fills their souls and all this stuff. Like, even like crappy 90s video games. Like I think of like Ocarina of Time or something. Like everything was super jaggedy and polygonal. In my head, so beautiful. Yeah.
I feel like those games to me feel like they were so much more, I don't know, vivid or kind of like you did the task, you played the game, you were entertained, and also you kind of fill in the gaps of the things that are not like super visually specific. So it's in your head and you can have it in there, and your mind is the best source of entertainment for you.
Yeah.
So
dude, that actually, so in animation, like often we'll block stuff out. And what I'm not telling you this, I'm just in case somebody's listening to this and they don't know this. Blocking will be, so before you actually animate it and it moves every single frame, you'll have just like still poses. So like you'll have a pose and it'll hold for like half a second, then another pose. It almost looks like a fast PowerPoint. When people watch those, in your head, your actual animation is never as good as your blocking. Because exactly what you're saying, your brain fills in the gaps. And we're all just these beautiful, creative creatures at heart. There's nothing that we can do as humans that's going to be better than what's in our heads and our hearts when we see blocking and we fill in the gaps.
Yep, it's so true. I mean, a sketch for me, I love drawing, so a sketch for me will always look better than the final drawing. Yeah. Always. There's like never... Yeah, it's just that's the way it is. And I, for whatever reason, like the past year, I've been interviewing a lot of comic book artists, and one thing that a lot of them agree on is that what good is a beautifully crafted piece of like the most detailed art if you can't finish the story? Like if you can't get it to tell what you're trying to tell, you'll burn yourself out, you'll run out of budget, it just won't get made. So I love that you mentioned that. And because I feel like I created the podcast also for it to be like a place of support and a place of like bringing some light to lesser known artists or studios, is there any studio or artist that you feel like deserves more attention, that you feel like is doing something unique or creative that, you know, needs the attention?
That needs the attention. Let me tell you. My good friend, JD Kalantar, he's an animator, fantastic animator. He also does these fantastic, just hilarious, insightful short films on the side. He's been submitting them to like film contests, competitions and stuff, and just winning like award after award after award. If you go onto his YouTube, JD Kalantar, Kalantar, he has under 1,000 subs, which is criminal. So go into YouTube, type in his name, JD Kalantar. Just so funny. He's so funny, and he's such a good director. He's also a good animator, so I'm kind of angry at him for just being good at everything. But really good stuff. I would check those out. That will be my plug for somebody else.
Love that. And for yourself, like, do you have any like specific goal, dream, or thing that you really want to work on in the future for yourself? Like, what is the future? What does the future look like for you in an ideal world?
The future is now, old man. Yeah. So right now, I'm doing what I'm calling resting and investing. So I'm focusing more on teaching right now so that I can step away from animation, just for a few months. The animation industry is not in a good place right now as of October 2023, probably because of the writer's strike over in the States, and the Screen Actors Guild strike. A lot of production companies just have a really tight hold on the purse strings because they're like, we don't have anybody to write anything if we try to put something new out, and we don't know what the money is going to look like after this strike. So now that that's coming to an end, I'm hoping the animation industry gets a little healthier. And the other thing with that in the Canadian animation industry is that we don't have a union like the Americans do. So you can benefit from that, or you can get the short end of the stick on that. So when there's a lot of opportunities, we tend to do well because we have leverage. But when there's not a lot of opportunities, we tend to not do well because we don't have leverage. Kind of evens out. Right now, we don't have any leverage. So I'm like, okay, I'll take a step back. And I know for me, something that I wanted to focus on was kind of like what you were saying. You'll make this beautiful piece, but what is it saying? Where's the magic? Where's the heart of it? That's something that I really want to improve on. And I've been doing this for 8 years, which some people are like, that's nothing. And some people are like, that's way too long. But that's something that I struggle with. So I started taking some classes with an animator from Pixar, Victor Navone, through Animation Collaborative. And I've taken iAnimate before. It was just full. If you want the review, I think it's great. Animation Collaborative. It's working out fine. So I'm really working on that. Getting a lot more acting, personality, magic, feeling. That's what I'm doing right now. The plan in the future is to hopefully do more of that professionally. Like I said, when you're talking about what's successful animation to you right now, it would be finding that professional gig where I could like spread my wings, so to speak, in terms of animation. And then teaching, I also love teaching. So thankfully I get to do a little bit more of that right now in college. So I also started teaching live online after school animation lessons over on artparty.club, which is the coolest URL ending is .club, just so you know. So if you ever want to get started in the world of 3D and animation, and you like how I speak, if you're titillated by any nugget of wisdom I may have accidentally spilled out today, I can teach you live every week online. It's all in Blender, just because with Autodesk, people won't be able to get a copy of Maya. Mm-hmm. But we got a 3D Foundations course right now. I'm hoping to add Animation 101, Animation 102. So my pitch is like, If you're ready to party, join the club at artparty.club.
Amazing. I mean, I can attest to how good you are as a teacher. So definitely.
Thank you so much.
Anyone who's
That's
listening to
very
this
sweet.
wants to get into animation, this is your chance. Now's the time.
Yeah, like I just started launching it. It's funny because when you start something like this, nobody's like into it. They're like, I'm skeptical. But it's like, bro, I'm a college professor. I'm a senior animator. Like, this is such a good deal for you. I just haven't been around long enough as Art Party to prove it yet. So hoping to grow that. It evolved out of my first teaching gig, which was in 2020 during the pandy, which all teaching went online, as you know, and a bunch of professors just retired because they were like, I'm not going to learn. I don't want to learn Zoom. I don't want to learn OBS. I don't want to do any of this. This sucks. I'm going to retire. Why wouldn't I? This is the right time. And I don't blame them. But your boy saw an opportunity. And I had always really wanted to teach. So I had the opportunity to teach at Humber. It was online. I think I already talked about it. I was teaching high school students. And it was so cool because I was like, okay, how would I teach an online class that people would actually care about? And I'm like, well, young people, the youth, everybody's watching Twitch right now. So why don't I just run it like a Twitch stream? So, I had these transitions, I got the mic, I got the webcam, I got the lights, all this stuff going and just trying to keep it entertaining, really striving, like I said, to sound like a 2013 era YouTuber, just to hook that attention, and everybody had a ton of fun. I loved it. And then after that, I didn't have a class the next semester, though I did after that. So after that, that's when I started posting on YouTube and TikTok as 3D coach. And I did that for a full year, every week. And I love that too. So I'm hoping to get back into that. But I'm an ambitious man and I have a lot going on at any given time. So I'm going to try it, but I don't know. I have so much to do. Life is full and exciting, and I'm just trying to grab at everything right now.
I mean, that's all you can ask for. A full, busy, happy life. And, you know, I think that's really good. I am also somebody who likes to pursue a lot of things at once, and it's hard to do it. But as long as you keep doing what makes you happy, I think you should keep doing that. And also, people always say, I want to learn this, I want to learn that. And now it's so much easier to learn things online. So definitely people should go and check it out, because imagine if you had that when you were younger. Like, wouldn't that have been amazing?
Yeah, especially like when you're 17 in high school and everybody around you is like, okay, so you can't really drive or drink or go to war or anything, but choose your career that's going to determine the rest of your life and go into debt for that. If there was an option where I could have paid less and like learned from, people at DreamWorks or whatever, which I've done through iAnimate and stuff like that, I would have been like, yeah, that's sweet.
Exactly. And you're offering an open source free program to learn it in, which is also something that with college and things like that, you don't get. You have to like marry yourself to Autodesk, things like that. So.
Oh, yeah. For Art Party, totally. Yeah. Like my thought process is Blender is honestly a super powerful software. Like I think it is more powerful than a lot of the industry professional software right now. It's just that, especially after Next Gen came out, which was made in Blender. I know a lot of studios in Toronto were investigating working with Blender. But I think as a huge studio, you get really set in the pipeline, and to change an entire pipeline is a big investment. But as Blender gets better, as Unreal Engine gets better for rendering, if I'm a new studio, that's what I'm picking. And even if not, like if you learn animation in Blender, you're like, but I don't know how to animate in Maya. Bro, you know how to animate. You just learn different buttons, right? Animation and Blender are different skills, right? You just so happen to learn it in Blender. You can learn Maya. You know how to animate.
It's like learning to draw with a pencil or with a pen. It's just like you're learning to draw.
Yeah. As if you're going to pick up a pen and forget everything.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Yeah.
All right.
Not at all.
I have one more question for you, and it's my favorite question because
Oh
everybody
boy.
gives a very different answer to this, and
Oh
it's a
boy.
hypothetical too, so those are always fun.
Okay. All right.
If you could have any magical art power to help you in your artistic process, what would you like that to be?
Not being colorblind.
You're colorblind?
Yeah.
I didn't
Yeah.
even know that.
Yeah, that's a big downer as an artist. Usually, honestly, it usually doesn't come up. Even in my day-to-day life, it doesn't really come up. Um, but I really, I really like painting. I like the idea of painting. I like paintings, but I don't paint because I have this hang up in my head, like I'll never be able to be perfect at it. And when people look at my work, they'll always be like, the colors look funny, right? Though apparently Van Gogh is maybe colorblind. I don't know. Anyway, I have that hang up. And if I wasn't colorblind, I could do more of that. And also, people have asked me to do, a lot of like graphic design or, video stuff. And it's really difficult for me to color correct or make sure the colors in this graphic design look good. And I need a lot of support for that. So to me, just being able to see colors well is like a superpower. I think it's so cool. I would love that. But if I couldn't get that, I would love to be able to draw well. Because being able to draw your ideas like so quick, very envious of that. And I'm not saying I can't get that. If I put in the work, I could do that. It would be a lot of work for me.
Yeah.
So I'm hesitant.
Maybe
Hesitant
the
right now.
universe was like, okay, you're gonna be a great animator, but you can't be that powerful, so you can't see color that well, and you can't draw.
Honestly, maybe that very well could be the case. I'm very grateful for where I am, and even all the really tough times that I've had in my life, like being really depressed at Sheridan, like learning I'm not going to be an amazing 2D traditional animator or anything. As hard as that stuff was, I do really appreciate it because I had a lesson to learn every single time, and I'm just so grateful for the life I have. So maybe it all worked out for the best. I mean, probably did.
What a beautiful note to end the podcast with.